I have learned that time is fleeting. After accruing 3 decades of life experience on this planet alongside more gray hairs than I'm comfortable to admit, I've come to understand that our time on this earth is finite, that one day our lives will end. And with that newfound epiphany, I've come to a big realization, a major logical breakthrough. And that breakthrough is that I don't have enough hours in the day to play bad video games. Seeing as every second of my life is precious and invaluable, I can't be wasting my existence on poorly designed interactive experiences. Whether these games be grindy, dull, or have convoluted design, I don't care to play horrible video games any more than I already have to. Because truly, is there anything worse than a bad game? Please don't answer that. I don't have time for this shit. I just don't. Which is why I'm not reviewing Rainbow Six Extraction, i.e. the latest online live service game by the abusers, the publishers at Ubisoft. See, Rainbow Six Extraction is a miserable experience. By its design, it is an online multiplayer live service meant to reel players in long-term with various characters, an online marketplace for microtransactions, challenges, upgrades, and an overwhelming amount of menu screens meant to inundate the player with the idea that this is a full-feature game with loads of content. But unfortunately, there is a problem. This content sucks. It is a live service menu that is missing the core reason that every game needs in order to keep people playing long-term. That reason being fun. One of the main reasons as to why people play video games in the first place, yet is for some reason very much absent in Rainbow Six Extraction. Because despite its near overwhelming amount of characters, unlockables, and etc., the game bears the facade of a full-feature game, but ultimately lacks giving the player a compelling reason to actually play it. It's not very good. For a little background, Rainbow Six Extraction is a cooperative tactical first-person shooter and is a follow-up to Ubisoft's popular Rainbow Six Siege, which is admittedly a game I have never played, so I can't really analyze the gameplay differences save for the concept. See, where Siege was a military first-person shooter, Extraction is yet another entry in the science fiction infected survival genre, which has seen a resurgence in popularity as of late, just like fascism. In the game, you pick a specific character that has their own weapons and perks, as you are subsequently joined by 2 other players, and then you are dropped into a specific map and start a match. These matches are broken up into 3 distinct sections, all with their own randomized and unique objectives like rescuing operatives, eliminating targets, gathering research, and more that need to be completed in order for the player to accrue XP and potentially earn new gear and advance the story, which admittedly sounds cool at first, but there is a catch. See, these objectives can be difficult to achieve and missions can go really awry, causing your character to take a lot of damage, which is really important to note, mostly because you can only be revived once before losing your character and much of their XP, ultimately causing players to routinely call for extractions so that they can at least escape with some dignity rather than death, which is far less optimal for obvious reasons. This gameplay loop isn't very enticing, mostly because it's hard to get a foothold into the game. See, Rainbow Six Extraction in theory is all about risk versus reward. In every match, the game wants you to consider whether you should keep venturing deeper into a given mission in order to accomplish more objectives, or if you should call for an extraction so that you can continue to fight another day. But in practice, this potential intriguing dilemma runs into a major hurdle in the form of random teammates. To be blunt, most random people aren't very good at playing games cooperatively. They are unpredictable, usually lack headsets, and often act in a way that compromises the group. Of course, I'm not immune to my own miscues, but fucking still, it is a problem. And this is especially true for online games where stealth is paramount. Games like Rainbow Six Extraction. In the game, eliminating hostiles quietly is paramount to success. It lessens the chance of dangerous enemy encounters and makes the environment more maneuverable due to how destroying inactive nest pod thingies quietly clears the area surrounding it of gunk that would otherwise inhibit quicker movements. But with random players, my missions rarely started on the right foot, and I often found myself fighting for my life from the get-go, and immediately calling for an extraction if I was lucky enough to survive, which isn't a very fun experience. After all, spawning only to leave the game minutes later because my teammates did something stupid doesn't make for a compelling video game. Hell, spending loads of time in menu screens only to leave a match after like 2 minutes is the antithesis of a good game. But wait, it gets worse. After a perpetual state of failing objectives, extracting early and seeing my character die more times than I can count, Rainbow Six Extraction Extraction often feels as if it lacks forward momentum. To be honest, I played this game for roughly 3 hours, but barely progressed any of my characters or the main story, due to failing to accomplish any meaningful objectives because of my team's general inability to work cohesively together, something that I admittedly was not immune from. I didn't progress in the game in any meaningful way. If anything, the opposite was true. I often lost progression, because on the one hand, extracting early means that your character survives, but likely didn't do much to progress their character unlockables like weapons and modifications, or the overall narrative as a whole. And if your operative took a lot of damage, this makes matters worse because they'll need to rest and recuperate in order to gain their health back. You won't be able to play as them for a while, lest you risk starting a mission with a low amount of health, which is something that should be avoided at all costs, just like an open position at Ubisoft. Things become even more complicated when your operative fails. When you run out of health, you lose the specific operative you were playing as, and you need to rescue them on a future mission if you want to salvage their progression. Which sounds cool at first because, risk versus reward gameplay can be fun. See why people enjoy Soulsborne games. But the problem is that rescue missions require a whole team working cohesively together due to all the moving parts of the mission. During these missions, one player has to pull the MIA character out of a pod thingy, all while the other two players need to open fire on certain moving weak points. And between all these things, rescue missions necessitate a vibing team, which is something that is unfortunately often missing from Rainbow Six Extraction, because, randos. And this is a major problem because failing to rescue an operative causes them to die, and while yes, the game eventually does return that operator to you over time, failing to rescue them in-game causes that operator to lose a significant chunk of XP, meaning that you lose a good amount of character progression. You essentially move backwards, and this is something that really adds up over time. As stated before, it's really difficult to gel with random teammates, and as the game went on, I accrued a big list of operators that were either low on health or missing in action and needed to be extracted, as well as operators who died in failed extraction attempts, which all ultimately resulted in the fact that I played this game for hours without any meaningful progression, ultimately ensuring that Rainbow Six Extraction was far removed from an enjoyable experience. Hence why I fucking quit. Admittedly, there are two potential workarounds for my issues with Rainbow Six Extraction. Firstly, I could have in theory played with friends. I could have been in a squad that I actually trusted. But the problem here is that most of my friends don't play this game, and the ones that did bailed faster than Western companies in Russia. There was honestly no one for me to play with but randos, sadly. And secondly, I could have played solo when things got tough. After all, matches in Rainbow Six Extraction are balanced depending on how many people are on your team. And if I really needed to rescue and extract one of my failed characters, I could have played solo where such a mission could be achieved much more easily. But honestly, I didn't go that route, mostly because I don't like that option, because honestly, that feels like a cop-out. Rainbow Six Extraction is supposed to be a cooperative multiplayer game, and playing solo feels antithetical to the goals of the game's design. And if anything, playing solo would undermine the game's purpose, even though it would have been beneficial to me as a player, which is honestly very telling in regards to how badly Ubisoft botched this game's design. Rainbow Six Extraction doesn't work as intended. As a whole, Rainbow Six Extraction is yet another live service game filled with a plethora of menus, upgrades, and customization options meant to keep the player engaged long term. But the problem here is that it's missing the most fundamental aspect of a good video game that maintains a player base. It is missing the fun. After all, it's difficult to consider the game's risk versus reward gameplay given that the player fails more often than they succeed. And finally, it is impossible to stay motivated playing the game when there are long periods of gameplay sessions that lack meaningful progressions, and when combined with the fact that the infected enemies aren't very well designed and look like dull sludge monsters, Rainbow Six Extraction doesn't have what it takes to reel me in long term. It does not respect my time, which is something that has become more and more important to me the older I get. Now, back to Elden Ring. And with that, that was the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like rating, share, subscribe, ring the bell, and leave a comment telling me what you think of Rainbow Six Extraction and live services in general. Also, please consider checking out my Patreon page. $1 a month gets you onto my Discord server and onto these credits, and $5 a month allows you to make review requests. The link to my Patreon is in the description. And speaking of Patreon, I just want to thank my patrons, especially my high tier ones in David, Samantha, Devlin, Mom, and Morgan. Thank you so much for supporting what I do. Love y'all.